Generations to come may speculate on what it was like to be alive in these times, for your history will allude to conditions that they will not be able to comprehend. The world as you know it will undergo radical transformations in the times to come, and the foundation upon which you have built your understandings of the nature of your reality will have changed so dramatically that one would be apt to question whether it was the same world at all. Indeed, that is the very nature of the process. For the world as you know it to be is, in fact, dematerializing in the wake of the momentum that is driving all creation. The changes are taking form in subtle increments, and often one does not even notice that a significant shift has occurred. But from the perspective of a broader vision, one will be able to look back upon these times with wonderment. And those of you who will have retained your physical form will have fascinating stories to tell as to how these changes came to be. Younger beings who will only be able to imagine life under such conditions will marvel at how such memories are even possible. You, whose very presence will attest to the extent of the journey in consciousness humankind has undertaken, see these days of transformation from a markedly different perspective. For collectively, you are the midwives who are assisting with the birthing of a new reality. Your willingness to be in physical form during these changes is an act of courage, for it would have been far easier to wait until the dust had settled and simply manifest into more favorable circumstances. You who read these words are among those who chose to experience the transformational journey in physical form and to have the experience of physical ascension. Future generations will have made preparations for incarnation into a dramatically different world. Their natural inclination to be less reactive reflects the fact that many of these younger beings have a dramatically different vibrational constitution than you do. Their energy fields are not cluttered with unresolved emotional blockages, and life for the young in general flows more smoothly than it did for you at their stage of development. The beings now incarnating into your reality are themselves representations of an interim stage in the evolution of the being who will ultimately populate your world. Their perceptions seem clearer at times than your conditioning permits yours to be, and they are puzzled as to why the older generation seems to struggle with their lives when they do not appear to manifest so much conflict in theirs. These beings have incarnated at vibrational levels that are in harmony with the conditions now prevalent in your world, whereas you incarnated at vibrational levels from which your reality has ascended. In keeping up with the pace of those changes, you have systematically shed the layers of density that were designed to keep you grounded at levels you have transcended. And for you, the process will be ongoing as long as you retain your present physical form. In the process, you are able to confront and release the karmic constraints that contribute to that vibrational density. and your conscious awareness of that process was the opportunity for which you chose this physical incarnation. The beings who will be incarnating in human form in the time soon to come will have a natural affinity for the world of nature. They will be able to communicate easily with other life forms that populate your reality, and their easy interaction with these other forms of intelligence will set the stage for the air of peace and harmony that will prevail. That harmonization is characteristic of an orientation based on a sense of oneness, not only with one's fellow human beings, but with all life. The beings now in their physical infancy will exhibit abilities that would have been considered most unusual not long ago. These beings are incarnating fully equipped to cope in a world that neither you nor they have seen as yet. For your world is still in metamorphosis, and the conditions for which they have been prepared have not as yet manifested. As your world teeters right on the edge of interdimensional ascension, these young ones will provide the stability that may often be lacking in physically older, more experienced beings. For the skills needed to cope in the world to come are not those developed by experience in a world that is fast becoming obsolete. The abilities needed to merge well in the conditions of the higher dimensions into whose vibrational force field you now travel are those the youngest amongst you are born with. These skills can be acquired, often with ease, by those of you who present no resistance to the momentum of change. Many amongst you are very much aware of the supernatural abilities so many are now encountering, often within themselves. These kinds of abilities are commonplace in the higher realities, and the fact that these experiences have begun to touch the lives of so many attests to the fact that you, as a populace, have transcended the levels where such occurrences were rare. It is to be expected that the beings born in the years soon to come will exhibit what has come to be considered extrasensory perception as a natural fact of life. As the natural levels of vibration of a being at birth continue to accelerate, those kinds of abilities can be expected to become refined. It will be a natural condition of humanness to become telepathic, not only with other humans, but also with other life forms and with other dimensional forms of existence. The phenomenon of channeling will come to be considered commonplace, and it will hold far less allure than it does now. Your culture's present fascination with what is perceived as otherworldly will soon diminish as you begin to recognize how widespread such experiences now are, despite the fact that such occurrences were once considered miraculous. You will begin to develop a level of spiritual sophistication, and the highly recommended skills of discernment regarding the kinds of consciousness with which you do or do not choose to interact. And ultimately, you will begin to recognize that the wisdom that you yearn for is right there within your own being and need not be sought from discarnate sources. The very young amongst you know this instinctively and will demonstrate far less attraction to the otherworldly and the unexplained than do present adult generations. The very young will be absorbed in the wonder of being alive, and with their formidable skills in manipulating their reality to produce what they want to experience. They will be less concerned with fending off adversity and overcoming obstacles than will the present population. For the criteria for the creation of those kinds of conditions would not be present for them energetically. It is important for those guiding the young to understand these differences and to resist the inclination to burden those entrusted to your care with excessive schooling in the limitations with which you labor. For those kinds of constraints will not be part of their process. The ease with which the young beings yet to come master the dynamics of the creation of their heart's desire will astound you who now struggle to grasp such concepts. They will understand quite naturally that they are creating their experience, and after an experiential training calculated to impress upon them the pitfalls of adverse thought patterns and speech, they will be well equipped to thrive in the times to come. Their best teachers will be their own experiences, and you will look upon them in rapt fascination, for they will be teaching you, by example, the lessons you now struggle to integrate. For them, theoretical understandings are unnecessary, for there is nothing to be changed, no belief systems to be restructured, no extensive training needed at all to undo the lifetime of conditioning that now confronts the conscious adult beings amongst you. The world for which they are so well prepared will be an extraordinary place to be in comparison to the conditions now at hand. And the issues with which they will be working will be different ones entirely from the kinds of life work of your own generation and that of the children already present in your world. The vibrational changes are occurring so rapidly now that it is possible to say that differences in the characteristics of children in the same family will be commonplace and are to be expected. The older children will be more vibrationally aligned with the adults now amongst your population. The children yet to be born will exhibit characteristics from birth that will distinguish them from their older siblings, and it will be fascinating to observe the differences in mental capabilities amongst children separated in age within the same family. It is important to remember the nature of these differences and to avoid the inclination to make comparisons. For the new breed of beings is scheduled to incarnate amongst you in stages over the course of several generations. And until the conditions in your world stabilize and a population of vibrationally adapted beings prevail, you can anticipate a populace with a radical diversity in ability and perspective. Those amongst you who have chosen to function as teachers in the times to come will be challenged to cope with the extremes of difference exhibited by the children with whom you have been entrusted from one year to the next. Much care will be needed on the parts of those who have chosen to play these roles, for what is now considered paranormal will soon be very normal indeed. It will be necessary for the teachers of the young to be acutely aware of the innate gifts of the children of tomorrow, for they will be a different breed from the children of today, and worlds removed from what may have been true of one's own childhood. Anticipated rates of development and standards of performance will need to be perpetually reevaluated, and one will need to rely less on what has been taught in one's formal schooling than with the reality of the here and now within the classrooms to come. The gifted amongst the teachers in these times will be those who do not seek to limit the young by standards of what is known to be possible, for those standards will continue to become obsolete with each successive year. Let the children themselves guide you in understanding the nature of the human species. Let them show you how to train the talented amongst them to maximize the potential in those gifts by allowing them to explore their perceptions to determine what is and is not possible. They will astound you in what they quite naturally will be able to do. And you will become clearly aware that you are encountering and nurturing a very different kind of being. For these beings, the potential is quite literally unlimited, for each of them will be defining themselves to themselves in each ongoing moment, creating themselves as they would wish to be. There is no necessity to structure the parameters within which they will conceptualize their world. For this they are amply capable of accomplishing without your help. Resist the temptation to limit the outer reaches of their dreams with your expectations of what experience has shown you to be possible. For the world in which these children will live is one you would be challenged to imagine. Create for them safe environments in which to explore the miracle of the physical form in which they have emerged, and equip them with sensory stimuli that will stretch the limits of sensory perception. Provide materials with which these young beings may express the levels of passion that they feel quite naturally, and which may strike you as incomprehensible. Allow creative expression free rein in the classrooms over which you may preside, and reap the bounty of joy these children will provide for you just by being who they are. For the parents and teachers of the generation now being born will bear witness to the most profound evidence of the ascension process. Those amongst you who are privileged to play these roles will know, from having held the small hands of the ones that walk through your lives, the miracle of unlimited potential made manifest, not by the rare protege, but by all of them. You who are destined to be the grandparents of the generation now emerging in your reality will experience the wonder of knowing that you have truly lived in many worlds in one lifetime. These blessed little pioneers will take you on amazing voyages of discovery if you let them. The stories you may be inclined to tell them of your childhood will perhaps be difficult for them to fathom. Consider instead allowing these exceptional beings to tell you the story of your second childhood, the story of the being harbored within you that's now in the birthing process. In the times to come, the young will be the teachers of the old in ways that have never before been experienced. And those amongst you who have let go of the need to prove yourselves and are content just to be, are capable of literally being reborn at the hands of the children. There is no mountain that cannot be scaled at will by the beings now emerging in your world as the children of tomorrow. For by definition, theirs is a world unbounded by parameters of possibility. Theirs is a world perpetually in the process of evolution, governed only by the unbridled imaginations of those who are creating it. Reality, for them, then becomes that which is most fervently desired, and the results are often instantaneous. It will often be hilarious or horrifying to observe the manifestations of these super beings as they begin to flex the musculature of instantaneous manifestation, and they soon learn by poignant experience the consequences of unleashing those capabilities. Once it becomes apparent that the responsibility for one's reality rests upon one's own shoulders, many of these small beings may well become enthralled with the playground that is their world. And it soon becomes obvious that there is no limit to what can be created within it. As the conditions upon the planet at large stabilize to mirror the vibrational levels of the beings incarnating within the framework of each of those realities, the foundation is established vibrationally to support those capabilities. And human beings will have bridged the gap that now separates the many worlds that make up your world. In the here and now of this rapidly accelerating process, the variations in levels amongst children are apt to baffle and to challenge most educators and parents. The children themselves are not equipped to cope with inherent abilities that their present world still regards as abnormal. And many will suppress and inhibit their natural tendencies toward self-expression in deference to perceived peer pressure. It is for those of you who have become aware of the transformation process to support these first pioneering spirits in the arduous task of forging a new reality with no frame of reference. Theirs will be a world in which they perceive themselves to be lost, and the parameters being force-fed within your education system do little to equip them to deal with themselves. Many of these first emerging beings will struggle with the reality of bridging two worlds simultaneously, and will feel until well into adulthood that they do not really fit in anywhere. With time, and the amassment of life experience with which to custom make a belief system, these beings, now in early childhood, will be able to stabilize in a world which will, by then, be in a better position to accept them. The vibrational levels amongst children in the generations to come will be determined largely by the levels of reality into which they have chosen to incarnate. These children, who may at birth be compatible with their environments, are no less subject to the upheavals and transitions now being experienced by the population at large. For as the vibration of your planet as a whole continues to accelerate, they must continue to harmonize with those changes, or they will manifest the consequences of energy imbalance, just like everyone else. Once the pace of the ascension process wanes, and the energies begin to stabilize and become the re-established norms at those dimensional levels, beings will be able to emerge who are destined to populate the world of the future. as transitional beings who are ascending hand in hand with the forerunners of those times. You are embodying levels and manifesting capabilities you do not yet even suspect are within your reach. Do not limit yourself into concluding that you are who you have always been. Nothing could be further from the truth. You are the embodiment of change itself, and your acceptance of the fluidity of the foundation of your reality is your best preparation for coping with the changes to come. You can anticipate having more challenges than will the children amongst your population, but your potential for manifesting the fullness of your capabilities as a creative life force in physical form is no less promising. Your willingness to adopt the trusting innocence and childlike enthusiasm with which you were gifted at the beginning of this incarnation will determine the extent to which you will be able to transcend a lifetime of conditioning in the arena of linear limitation. The fact is, you are no longer in the same world you were born in. You just think that you are. That world is light years away, experientially, from where you are headed. A destination not nearly as far as you may think from where you stand right now.